Down in this area, farmers, African Christian. And just beside that are Arab Muslims. Now, that's in 1972. This is by 1987. So you can see that all the nomadic people with their herds moved down on top, and this is Muslim moving on top of Christian, farmers with established lands, other people moving onto it, and then on top of that we discover oil right over here and uranium. And so within no time we have this. So is that an environmental problem? Is it a social problem? Is it an economic problem? And what we have to do is to somehow be able to look at these things. And is it isolated? Or are some of these people who have already, when the picture was taken, are they already in Europe? And what are the changes that will be faced as refugees start moving around the world? So there's a need for this economic understanding, but I see it in roughly three different ways, and I'll come to this. Right now, I think back to the last time when we had a strong environmental movement, and that was in the late 1980s, just as we were preparing for Rio. And then Clinton said, "It's the economy, stupid." And that was the end of the environmental movement. This time, we were hoping for a green economic recovery. Now, when I listen to Professor Muntz and look at corporate social responsibility and try to separate out what is greenwashing, what is just sort of, oh yeah, that's green. There was a great Professor Elkhorn who said, if we teach a cannibal to eat with a knife and fork, is that progress? But I think the pricing of carbon will probably do as much in changing the private sector as much as some of these voluntary impositions they're putting upon themselves. And I don't want to belittle it, because there are a number of corporations that are doing extremely good work in corporate social responsibility. And in fact, I challenge the public sector. Where is public sector social responsibility? We don't even talk about that. And where is individual social responsibility? Another thing we don't really talk about. And so that's part of the whole thing about learning and understanding. But I said I was interested in three main areas of economics and education, ESD, as Alexander was explaining to us. The first is definitely the need for better specialists. 51 million out of work. Well, what has brought us here? So we need to be able to blend economics and sustainable development in a much better way. So we need these specialists in the MBA programs who are really looking at sustainable development. You see, up till now, our education, public awareness, and training sessions have largely been steered towards development in general. Our globalization programs that we are put into our universities have largely been put there to train people to be able to make more profit globally. Now what we need to do is to be thinking about putting a steering wheel on our programs, our education. On ESD is talking about bringing purpose and nobility and so on back into the goal. We need we need to question the very concept of progress, which is only about 150 years old. And when we think of civilization, 150 years. And so when Professor Muntz was talking about these different theories and when they came into being. Now, unfortunately, the specialists and so on, I was counting roughly, and there seemed to be quite close to 67 people, which in my mind then twigged over, there are 6.7 billion people in the world. So if each one of you represented 100 million, okay? Certainly on that scale, we wouldn't have the specialists sitting there, right? In fact, we wouldn't even have people with PhDs sitting here. Okay, if I've had time, I'll come back to that. But the second thing that we really need is how can we infuse economics with a flavor of sustainable development into the training of all professions, not just that handful of economics people, but how can we infuse this literacy into engineering, into healthcare, into the banking sector, into just sort of, well, you take it, the NGO world, etc. Then the third component, after the infusion to sort of the professionals and into our disciplines and ways of thinking things, how do we actually bring this kind of mixture of economics and sustainable development into the understanding of the general public? That is the work of the RCEs. How can we bring this into a wider scale to get public understanding, to support enlightened legislation when it comes from the different political parties, when it comes from City Hall? The number of things that are going on here, in many cases, wouldn't go on because they couldn't get the political support. It would be almost political suicide for politicians to do it. But it is also so important to have an enlightened consumer. The ones who are not going to be duped or fooled by green packaging and those superficial things that are there. People, how can the general public truly understand what is the true cost of products? What is the true cost of a table, this podium? You see, we pay to harvest the wood, but we don't pay for the wood largely. It's a different way of thinking about things. How can we steer their purchasing, etc.? So that's the role that I see of the RCEs. And especially when we have RCE Bene, with Munich, with the strong banking component, if we can engage the reinsurance kind of thing, to get that understanding that a general public would question the idea that we can buy our way out of the current problems we're in. Because the economic crisis is just a symbol of what is truly causing the problem. The understanding that is needed